What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Zach and Pat Show. I'm Zach.
I'm Pat.
This is the show about manhood, fatherhood, entrepreneurship, and the mentality it takes to be successful at those things. And we'll probably sprinkle in some helpful real estate advice too, because that's what Pat and I do. You know, guys, life can be tough, go through some things and struggle at times, but this is the show to let you know that you're not alone. If you're someone out there going through any of these things, this is the show for you. All right, guys, let's talk about something we all need. High quality, comfortable, stylish clothing that actually holds up in real life. Whether you're grinding at work, hitting the gym, or just hanging out, the Normal brand has you covered. I've been rocking their gear, and let me tell you, it's not your average clothing line. They've nailed it perfect with the perfect blend of durability, comfort, style, whether it's a go-to rugged Henley, a hoodie, a button-down that doesn't make you feel like a stiff, the Normal brand is where it's at. The best part is you can support the show while upgrading your wardrobe. Just hit the link in the description below. Check out their collection. Trust me, once you try it, you'll wonder why you didn't do it sooner. The Normal brand. Made for real life, built to last. Now go check them out.
Shout out to our friends over at Captain Beard Co. Guys, if you are looking for beard care products, shampoo, conditioner, body wash, give Captain Beard Co. a try. They have this unbelievable beard butter, balm, oils, and then it smells amazing. Ladies, if you're looking for something for your men as a gift to help with their grooming, check them out. Also, if you guys are looking to just set the mood one night, candles, unbelievably smelling candles made with all natural ingredients here locally to St. Louis. Give them a shot. Also, while you're there, use the promo code Zach and Pat for 10% off your purchase.
Hey there, guys. I really appreciate you checking out the Zach and Pat Show. If you can obviously tell, we are a newer podcast, but one way we're really trying to grow the show is trying to get up the amount of subscribers we have. So, you know, if you're watching the show and you're getting something out of it, we'd really appreciate it if you could click that subscribe button. That would help us out a ton. Please click that button. And now back to the show. We have a very special guest in studio today. He's a friend of mine. He's a pro MMA fighter and coach, the great and powerful Kory Beck. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Great to be here.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on, man.
This is something I've always wanted to ask you. Where did the nickname The Scientist come from?
The Scientist. Okay, so I got it when I was back in college. I was studying science, but ultimately it came from just like my approach, my methodologies, my systems to training, the way I did things, very, very data driven. So I journal about my training sessions, what I did well, what I didn't do so well. My weight cuts are all by the numbers, you know, like I could tell you after I get done cutting weight, how much sodium that I'm going to consume before my fight to make sure that I'm, you know, actually rehydrating and refueling appropriately. So really just came from, you know, my approach and the way I did things. And everybody kind of just like noticed that. And because I was, you know, studying science in college and now I'm an engineer, it just kind of fit, became a scientist, and it's been that way ever since. So
it's pretty cool. It's a cool nickname. But I'm sure there's a lot of doing it that way. I mean, having the data and the science behind that, like I'm sure that makes it more efficient and just better for athletes having that data when it comes to one, cutting weight and how to get back, you know, rehydrating your body in a quick manner and things like that and preparing for a fight and cut. Like I'm sure having that data is huge.
Yeah, it makes a massive difference. And I think we're seeing that over, you know, the course of the last 5 to 10 years, like how MMA has kind of changed in that aspect because, you know, you look back at old school MMA, you know, archaic weight cutting methods, everything else like that, and how things have changed a lot now. And just like anything, you know, everything kind of starts on the coast and works its way in. And I've always kind of been on top of the data-driven stuff, and really more recently started seeing where there's a big gap still, especially from like amateur to pro and the methods as far as training, cutting weight, the nutrition behind things. And I've really just, not just for myself, but for other people, started trying to like fill that gap. It's become something that I've kind of fallen into naturally, you know, as a coach, and starting to help people with their nutrition, with their weight cuts and things like that, because it makes a massive difference, you know, when you're talking about performing in the cage, performing in the gym, whatever it is, when you talk about performing in life, like just as a business owner, you know, and I talk to coworkers at work about this too, like, hey, like if you fuel properly, if you get the right sleep, if you take the right supplements, you do the right things, like you're going to feel way different. Your mind's going to operate way different. Your body's going to operate way different. That's ultimately going to help you perform better in whatever it is that you want to do. And yeah, like not everybody likes the numbers. Okay. It doesn't always have to be that way. You don't have to track every macro you intake, your protein, your carbs, your fats, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be that complicated. But if you're willing to do that, you're willing to collect that data, makes it that much easier. Or if you're at least willing to eat certain things, do certain things, and then give me that data, I can run the numbers for it. I'll happily do that. And then we can use that to make improvements. Because the thing is, if you're not collecting data, whether you're reflecting on your training sessions, whether it's like going into your nutrition, whether it's your mindset even, if you're not collecting that data and using that to reflect and improve, then you're just guessing. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're trying to take the guesswork out of whatever it is we're trying to improve, and we're trying to develop like an actual system, an actual path forward to get there. We're not just like taking shots in the dark here and just going about our days and training just however. Like, you might make improvements, but you might not. And when you start actually tracking those things, reflecting on your experiences, that's how you can move yourself forward in whatever it is you want to do.
Yeah. I feel like so many fighters, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like there's probably a lot of guys out there just fucking winging it.
Yeah, and you see that a lot. Like guys all the way up to the highest levels of the UFC. Like one example, Merab, okay? Yeah. Great, incredible fighter. He doesn't miss weight and he has his way of doing things, but he doesn't eat for like 3 days before weigh-ins.
Jesus.
And while that might be effective, might help him make the weight, it's not necessary. And it makes you wonder, okay, like, what is that absolute lack of calories in those last 72 hours leading up to the fight doing to his performance? Like, the impact might be small. And obviously, he's got an incredible gas tank. So,
like legendary gas tank.
Why change something that's working? But just like an example of that, like if you don't have that type of gas tank, you don't want to not eat for 3 days just to make weight, when you could use other strategies to where you can eat and can like enjoy some food throughout fight camp and still make weight in a healthy way and perform even better.
Maybe that's why he's so good. He gets that extra level because he's hangry.
Yeah.
Maybe. I think he's just built different.
Yeah,
and his work ethic is
insane.
Next level. So, that makes a huge difference too.
Sure. Well, for the people that don't know, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh man, a lot of things. Like you said, I'm a fighter. I'm a coach. I've been fighting for over 10 years now, probably training close to 14. I am a dad. I have an awesome 6-year-old son, and I work as an engineer, work different hours and stuff, so it gives me time throughout the week. I'm just an average dude that loves to learn, loves to help other people, and just loves to continue just improving myself. And it hasn't always been that way, but I've really found what works for me and how to make myself better and in turn make people around me better. And, just living life with a purpose. That's awesome. What I try to do.
So you're an engineer at Nike?
Yeah, engineer at Nike. So, be careful what I say here with all the NDAs and all that kind of stuff. But we have a manufacturing plant in St. Charles, one in Beaverton, Oregon, where we just make the airbags that go in the shoes. So plastic, that's it. We make the airbags. But we make it in a process that is totally Nike. No other company does it that way. I'm a quality engineer. So essentially make sure that it's good. Make sure that what we make is, going to pass all the testing.
So just the pieces that go in like the Air Maxes and all that?
Like the Air Maxes, all that. Okay. Those airbags that go in the heel of the shoe.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what we make. Granted, we do make external products and things like that for, this is kind of like a historical thing at the plant and other stuff. And I'm not going to talk about the specifics there, but we make other things that are really cool and that, have a big impact on, the society as a whole that most people don't even know.
So not just Nike's clothing, brands, and shoes,
it's
just other things.
We make some external products for external customers.
Okay.
And yeah, it's really cool. I look at stuff under microscopes. I do different lab testing things. I run the numbers and just make sure things are good. And I would say I'm basically like a material investigator. Like if something is used incorrectly or we don't know what it is because manufacturing is a complicated process, right? Then it's up to me and my team to figure out what are we going to do with it, how are we going to use it in a way where we're not wasting money, and what impacts is this going to have on any of the products and stuff like that. So it's fun. It allows me to use a different side of my brain that I don't often use in my everyday life. And I work 4 10-hour shifts Thursday through Sunday. So I still have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday to, train, coach, and do all the stuff. Get plenty of PTO. So whenever it comes to getting off for fights on the weekends, if I got to travel and corner, it's not an issue. And ultimately, Nike is a athletic brand and I'm an athlete. So it seems to
perfect.
fit.
Yeah, dude. It
That's
sounds
awesome.
like the scientist part.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, it
the
all
athlete
fits
part.
in.
It all fits, man.
Yeah.
So where did your, cause I believe we were down at Missouri State, I think at the same time. if I'm
Yeah,
not
probably.
mistaken.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
more Missouri
Another
State
Mo-
guys.
Yeah, I
State
must say.
Is that where you kind of started training martial arts? Or
It's not where I started training martial arts. It's where I started my fight career. So,
let's start from the beginning.
Yeah,
Where did it all?
how'd I get into it?
Yeah.
I was probably 13, 14 years old, and I remember like watching the UFC, and really a big thing. I remember going to one of my buddy's house, and at that time he had, when fights were still on cable and stuff, he had all the good sports channels.
Yeah.
So I remember staying up real late and watching like the WEC, Uriah Faber, and those kind of guys, and I was like, man, this is like incredible. And my dad brought home a Gracie DVD that one of his friends gave him at work. And I, popped it in DVD player. Those probably don't even exist anymore. But anyways, and started watching it. And, obviously I'm a smaller guy. I've always been a smaller guy, but I've always been an athlete, played sports my whole life. And I was always pretty good, but size was sometimes a limiting factor. And I just really fell in love with the jiu-jitsu promise. Like you can, no matter how big you are, no matter how small you are, if you know this art, you can apply it in the right way and it'll be effective. I fell in love with the jiu-jitsu promise. I was watching MMA on TV and I was just like, man, I got to do that. Like I'm a small guy, like there's weight classes, like I got to get into that. Like maybe that's my thing, because I was a hockey player growing up, and I always wanted to go to the NHL like anybody does, right? And I planned on going to Mo State and playing hockey. And ultimately, it got to the point where I met with some recruiters, and they were like, yeah, man, I don't know if you know this, but you're not 6 foot tall, and we don't recruit goalies that are under 6 foot tall. I was like, well, yeah, I should have known that. And then I was like,
Do you still play hockey?
I don't. I probably haven't played since college. I would love to get back out there and do something like that. But anyway, so I started training when I was in high school, on and off. I wrestled 1 year in high school and really just trained in the off-season hockey because, like I said, hockey was my big thing. And then it was the summer before I was going to college. I was training at Finney's. I told Jesse Finney, I was like, hey, man, like I want to fight, but I wasn't 18 yet. So I had a young birthday and all that. And he was like, okay, well, if you start coming to these practices, then maybe we can get you a fight before you go off to school. That didn't happen, but I did start training with the pros and all that. And I remember being, $125, soaking wet and just getting my butt kicked every single day. And anyways, I ended up going to college. I found a gym in Springfield, Team Fusion, under Brad Montgomery. And I had my very first fight, I think, in November, shortly after.
So like right when you got down to school, pretty
Yeah,
much.
and it was actually really cool because I was rushing a fraternity at the time, Pike, and we did this thing where basically I was essentially a matchmaker for my very first fight because the promoter, it fell into place perfectly. There was a local promoter that was looking to get the viewership from the college campus, and he just didn't know like how to get it out there. And I was like, whoa, I go to college here. I'm in a fraternity and I want to fight. I'm like the perfect candidate for this. I saw it on some like thread somewhere. I don't know if it was Reddit or whatever. And then like I messaged this girl who knew him and she got me connected. I went and talked to him about it. And he was like, I was like, yeah, I have an idea. Like, what if I fought somebody in another fraternity? And then even further, what if we made it to where the ticket sales from the fight, the winner gets the ticket sales and gets to donate them to their philanthropy event. I was like, cool, let's do it.
I remember this.
Yeah,
I
so
remember this like happened. I didn't go.
I walked door to door to fraternity houses saying like, hey, do you have anybody that would be interested in like training for, a period of time or has trained before that's around this type of weight? And eventually found somebody who was formerly in the military, had some type of, background in some grappling. And they were like, yeah, cool, let's do it. So basically I trained at Team Fusion. This guy trained at Springfield Fight Club. I want to say for like 6 months. And then we fought. And that was my very first amateur MMA fight. And then it just kind of went from there. So interesting little, way to make it happen. And that was in November of 2014. Yeah.
So what'd your fraternity do with the winning money?
What was our philanthropy event at the time? I think it was, had something to do, gosh, they'd kick me if they knew that I forgot this, but we had a Pike fire truck, so it was something to do with like the fire department and burn victim and things like that. But yeah, we donated probably close to $2,500 from the ticket sales and all that. So
that's awesome.
It was a cool little thing.
Now, was that the only one, or did they like make that a
that was the only one that we did that
Gotcha.
way. But yeah, then I just kept fighting from there, and I had 11 amateur fights, and then eventually went pro in 2019. So yeah,
Nice.
in a minute.
Yeah, awesome.
You're still fighting today?
Yeah. I mean, I had a fight last September, so it's been a minute since then. I don't have any fights currently scheduled. So I'm not actively looking for fights right now. I've had some issues with some concussions in the past, some issues with my neck and stuff like that. So just kind of trying to get that sorted out. And I've, fallen into this, not fallen into it, but, I started coaching several years ago and it's just become more and more now. We have a lot of amateur fighters at the gym and I'm, cornering and coaching and all that kind of stuff. So my role has changed a little bit and, I'm just not, I haven't been looking for a fight. It's not to say that I'm not going to fight, but I don't have anything scheduled at the moment. So we'll see what the future holds in that area. But yeah, I'm still fighting.
Damn, man, you're a fighter, coach, engineer, dad. How do you juggle it all? What's the structure to your life like?
Ooh, chaos.
So you're not burning out.
It's just absolute chaos. But no, for real, I think it really is just like a mentality thing and finding what works for me. And that's like just structuring my days, like planning things out, having routine, making a lot of sacrifices. I think a lot of people don't realize that when you want to do something that's bigger than yourself, it comes with making those sacrifices and making the choice to choose this thing over that thing. And it's knowing that, okay, just really embodying the characteristics of a fighter and like what I think to be a man, being resilient, being disciplined, being driven, and most importantly, knowing why. Because if you don't know why you're going to do something, then there's nothing that's going to drive you more than that. And just really sitting down, laying everything out, saying, what do I want to do? What do I have to do to get there? And what things do I have to let go of in order to do those things? Setting those goals, setting your priorities, and taking daily action over and over and over again. Whether you want to wake up or not, you have to, whether you want to work out or not, you have to. And actually that's wrong. I shouldn't say you have to, because you get to. That's another piece of this is the gratitude. When you see that you might be feeling overwhelmed, you're feeling like life is chaotic and all of this kind of stuff, like you can look at it as an obligation or you can look at it as an opportunity. And that comes back to understanding that, hey, yes, I'm struggling. I have a ton of obstacles in my way. I have so many things that I have to manage, so many things that I have to balance. But all of these things gives me opportunities to be my best self, to be a better man, to be a better father, be a better fighter, and to be an example to my son and the people around me, and to step into that role, take the action to lead by example, and do it with a grateful heart where you can look and see the opportunities that all of these things present to you. And afterwards, look back and understand, like, wow, I'm really glad that I didn't just, give up on that and take a step back and do what was comfortable. Because if you're uncomfortable, most of the time that means that you're actually on the right path. I think sometimes a lot of people, they start to feel uncomfortable in life and they'll be like, man, maybe I'm off course. I think it's the opposite. I think when you are uncomfortable, that's when you know you're on the right path, because you're having to face the obstacles. You're having to do the difficult things that are ultimately going to propel you forward and make you a better person.
Uncomfortable parts. That's where you grow. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
absolutely.
When you're working out, you're not growing your muscles. You're breaking them down so that
Right.
they grow bigger.
Yeah.
That's where we grow when it's uncomfortable. But mental, our fighting is as mental as it is physical.
Yeah.
And I mean, what would you say is like one of the biggest mental battles you've had to overcome inside or outside the cage?
Man, that's tough. I would say, let's start with this. Inside the cage, I think a lot of people think that as a fighter, you're just, you have resilience and you're going to just do whatever it takes to win. And if you've trained that, if you've built that, if you have that mentality, yes, most of the time you will. However, you're always going to be faced with that question of, do I want to quit? Do I want to get out of here? No matter how mentally tough you are, no matter how strong you are, no matter how good you are, if you're getting blasted in the face, if you're, flash knocked out, if you're in a bad spot, you have cuts, whatever it is, there will be points where your brain is like, hey man, just let it go. Like, all you got to do is stop moving and the ref's going to step in and stop it. And the biggest thing is you have to make the choice. You have to make the choice to keep moving forward, to keep going through what you're going through, because you know that if you go through it long enough, if you push hard enough, there's always going to be a way that you can, like a path where you can find a way to win, right? So I think ultimately it's just taking that step back and knowing, like, I'm going to be faced with this question if I want to quit, and I have to make the choice that I want to keep going. And even if you might not see this positive outcome, that the win or whatever it is, you have to remember that I can find a way to get there. Even if you're maybe not better than the guy, even if you're, broken. Like, there was a time, it was my second professional fight. Went out, it was in Indiana. It was, main event. And I went out and I won the first round. Everything was going great. Second round comes and he took me down off the cage, landed, and I fractured 3 of my ribs. And I could feel it immediately. And then, I managed to get up and he took me down again in that same shoulder in the same spot. So I have 3 fractured ribs. My cartilage was torn completely off the bone. Basically, the right side of my rib cage isn't connected to my sternum anymore. And because of that, I was struggling. Because of that, I was on the bottom. I'm getting elbowed in the face. Like, I had massive cuts. I ended up getting massive gash behind my ear, over my eye. I'm, bleeding profusely. I can't, I'm struggling to get up and all that. And that was one of those moments that I was telling you about where it's like, hey man, all you got to do is cover up and the ref will save you. But you have to make a choice. Like, okay, I don't want that. Like, I gotta, maybe I could have gotten out of there with less injuries. But for me, it was like, I'd rather not be able to get up and keep moving than just to quit. And, you find a way. You find a way. I managed to find a way. I even threw up an arm bar at the end of the second round. I couldn't extend it because my ribs were so messed up. But I made it out of the round. And in between rounds, there's pictures. You'll see my face is completely bloody, like everything. And it was like, okay, I am absolutely battered. I lost that round and I don't have all of the tools to try to really like go out there and execute a game plan that I wanted to execute in the first place. And I ended up shooting a desperate takedown and getting choked and having to tap. But the point of that story is to say that when you're in those moments, you always have a choice whether you want to keep going or you want to quit, and that's up to you. And the more times that you choose to keep going, the more you're reinforcing that choice in your own mind, the easier that it's going to be in the future to make that choice again, right? So whatever it is, if you allow yourself, when you face something uncomfortable, you face something difficult, and you're like, okay, I'm out, I'm going to stop here. You're reinforcing that. You're probably going to stop even sooner next time. But if you, on the other end of things, if you make the choice to keep going, then it'll be easier and easier to make that choice in the future. And you're going to get further and further, be able to adjust and adapt to being uncomfortable in those difficult situations. And before you know it, you're starting to build that resilience that you want. And it just comes through the habit of making the choice to keep going when you don't want to.
That's awesome. You're sitting there with 3 broken ribs. Is it the adrenaline that's flowing that's kind of keeping that pain away, or what? Are you just putting it out of your mind, or you're like, fuck it, this is just going to hurt for a while and I'm just going to do what I can?
Adrenaline is a really powerful thing. It's a really powerful thing. No, you can absolutely feel it. I think it's really just like the adrenaline makes a big difference, but the decision of, okay, let's put it this way. I think the shame of giving up on myself is going to be more painful than those broken ribs.
Gotcha.
That's what it comes down to. And I didn't want to give up on myself. I knew that I can either deal with the pain of giving up or I can deal with the pain of these broken ribs and keep trying. That's what it came down to.
The broken ribs is temporary.
I mean, kind of temporary. The broken ribs heal.
Right.
The cartilage, like these ribs up here, these top 2 ribs, they connect through cartilage to your sternum. Well, that cartilage is torn completely off the bone. So these 2 ribs are no longer connected to my sternum, and they're never going to heal. That cartilage is never going to regrow.
Can you just like feel your ribs?
Yeah, I could. You could feel it right now if you wanted to.
Good.
Yeah,
we'll pass.
I trust you.
And I like if I lay on my stomach, I can feel them like on whatever surface it is. Yeah, and then that's just the way that it is. And eventually you lose, those nerve endings kind of die and you lose the pain that comes with it. So it's just a weird feeling now. It's not a painful feeling.
Yeah.
But it's just structural damage that never.
Then they can't go and do surgery on that, or?
Oh man, that's a big thing. That's actually one of the reasons why I don't really go to see sports doctors anymore. Because I saw
We've talked about this.
I saw about 13 different doctors, and they went, they'd refer me to a trauma surgeon, refer me back to an orthopedic, whatever. One guy said he could go in there and put a steel plate in there, whatever. And I was like, I probably don't want that. And long story short, every single one of them told me not to fight again. So ultimately, I said, okay, see you, doc. I'm probably not going to come back and see you again. And then I spent several years working with Dr. Ian McIntosh at the Health and Performance Center. He's a chiropractor, but more of like a holistic, type of approach with, strength and conditioning and that kind of stuff. I worked with Sarah and Steve at the fitness dojo to really kind of reposition my body to, and build some muscle mass around that area to keep it a little bit safer. And just doing a lot of like things naturally to try to help it, because ultimately I knew that it wasn't going to really like fix itself, but I can kind of work around it and do things that would be beneficial. It took a lot of learning, and that's really what got me into a lot of the, deep into the strength and conditioning, the nutrition, that kind of stuff. And, I don't have any formal education in that, but I do have a science background, and I've probably read more literature on those topics than a lot of people. Just because I was dealing with something that I needed to fix and nobody could give me the answers. So I was like, okay, I might as well try to fix this myself. And then I teamed up with some of those people I mentioned, and we've made major progress. And it really doesn't bother me or give me any issues anymore. Unless I get hit directly on it, then, that's a problem. But overall,
Trying to avoid that anyway.
yeah, trying to avoid that anyway.
Yeah. So MMA at like the lower levels is, the pay is kind of pretty notoriously bad. Unless you're obviously like at the higher levels. How do you approach managing money while still training at an elite level?
It's a tough one. For me, it just means like I still have a regular job, and that comes from the fact that like I am a dad, so I have like responsibilities and things like that. You see some guys where they're more able to get by on like sponsorship money, like, like finding a cheap place to staying with some other people. And those types of guys, they oftentimes have a really great like support system. And I mean, I have a really great support system as it is, but you have to find a way to build a group of people around you, a support system around you to help elevate you to where you want to go. And if they're not willing to make like financial investments in you to help you get to the next level, then you have to find a way to do that yourself. And that means probably having a regular job, which means when you have a regular job, you have to, train before or afterwards, sometimes both. Find a way to get a run in on your lunch break, maybe. And it just means your schedule is going to be packed. So then it goes back to that whole thing of like, hey, you got to manage your time. You got to manage your priorities. You got to know like, okay, maybe I have to take a day off of work this day so I can go and spar or go to this seminar or whatever it is. Or it's like, hey, I might miss this class because I'm working. Where can I fit in another training session? Because if you look at how many training sessions you have over the course of a fight camp, if you miss one here, miss one there, miss one here, like they all add up. So you have to find a way to just get it in, whatever it is. And then you add in injuries and stuff like that. There's always going to be an excuse. There's always going to be an excuse not to train, not to do this, not to do that. You have to find a way to adapt to that. And I think that's why MMA fighters are so good at adapting to obstacles in general. It goes back to that mindset thing because you realize that you're never going to be 100%. There's always going to be something that is hurting, something that is injured. You're working a job, some type of obstacle, and you have to find a way around it. Like maybe you can't, grapple today, or you can't do it hard. Like maybe you just drill, or maybe your shoulder's messed up, so you just work on punching off your other side, or you work on your footwork, or maybe you're riding a bike to get some cardio. Like there's always something you can do. And I think that translates to anything in life, right? Like there's always some excuse you can make, some excuse you can have. There's also always something you can do, even if it's not ideal, even if it's not something, not the best way or not what you wanted to do, there's still something you can do. And you have to find a way to do that. You have to find a way to get things in, to schedule your training and to have the priorities. And going back to what I said before is knowing your why. Like, why are you doing this? Why do you want to do this? And when you know that, then that's going to drive you to wake up before work and go on that run, get that early training session in, go to the gym afterwards and train hard. And then let's say you had a morning session, you worked all day, you had an evening session, 2 evening sessions, and now you're like, okay, I'm getting closer to the end of my camp. I need a little extra cardio or whatever it is. Like, do you have that why to lace up your shoes and hit the road after working and training for 14 hours? Like, you got to make that choice, and that goes back to making the choice to do it. Because if you get close to the fight and you realize you need confidence, right? Everybody needs confidence when you're going into a fight. Best way to have confidence is to stack the proof. Stacking proof means you're doing what you need to do to be best prepared to get there. Well, when you look back and you realize like, damn,
skip that session.
I didn't lace up those shoes and hit the road. Yeah. Like that confidence isn't going to be there. So when you realize that your performance in the cage is going to be impacted by all of those things, then like I said, it becomes easier and easier to make the choice. The more times you make that choice to do that difficult thing, the easier it is. You're just building momentum. You act on inspiration first, build momentum. As you build momentum, you make habits. As your habits get dialed in, you create discipline. Once you're disciplined, then that's really what it takes to achieve your goals in the cage or your goals outside of the cage. It really doesn't matter. It's a simple process.
Talk a lot about, you mentioned being a dad. You typically see, I know I'm one of these for a while, that dads typically lose their edge when they have kids. How's being a father changed the way you train and fight?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, again, it's a mentality thing. I told myself whenever I became a father that I wasn't going to let it limit me from doing any of the things I wanted to do in life. And I think that came from being a father early on. Because you see a lot of dads that like they do all the fun stuff, all the cool stuff in their 20s, right? And then they have kids in their 30s and they're like, okay, I'm going to settle down. And they kind of accept that, like, hey, these big aspirations, these big goals, I don't really need them anymore. I'm going to focus on being a dad, which is great. Don't get me wrong. I have absolutely nothing against that. But I became a father at 23. I knew that I still had big goals, big dreams, big aspirations, whether it was going to the UFC or not. And I knew that I wasn't going to let having a child limit me from doing the things that I need to do. And I also knew that I wasn't going to let the things I do limit me from being a good dad. So then it was like, okay, how do I balance this? And ultimately, it comes down to, as a dad, now you have a greater why because you have a child. Not only do you want to provide for them, not only do you want to do the right things, but you're also leading by example. Your kids are always watching. Whether they can talk or not, whether they tell you that they see what you're doing or not, they're always watching. And if you lead by example and you do the right things, you put in the work, you make sure you still have time for them, and you do all of that, then being a dad is actually like a superpower when it comes to being an athlete and being a fighter. And it really just depends on how you look at it. Because you can look at it like, okay, I'm a dad now. I don't have as much time. I don't have as much, energy, whatever it is. Like, you sleepless nights, man, that's tough. Think about waking up and training and trying to work out and do all those things, sleeping, when you have a newborn or whatever it is, like, you find a way. And there's some times where you do make some sacrifices. You maybe don't train as much or whatever it is. And that's okay. You have to find a way to still be prepared. And nothing's going to be perfect. You have to focus on progress, not the perfection. And whether it's, whether you're an athlete and a dad, whether you're just a dad, whatever it is, I think that applies too. Like, you're never going to be a perfect dad. You're never going to be a perfect athlete. You're definitely not going to be perfect if you're trying to be both. But you can always try to improve. You can always try to be better. And like, you got to take a step back and like really understand where you're at to even know where you need to improve.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. I mean, because I know for me, our kids see everything. So what is it that I want them to see?
Yeah.
I want them to see me working hard. I want to see them to see me training, doing things to get better, stronger, faster, better at my job, things like that. Because that's just they're gonna see that and translate that into their lives.
Yeah, exactly. Monkey see, monkey do. When your kids see you doing those things, like, if you want your child to be a certain way, you better be that way.
Yes.
Because they're gonna do exactly what you do.
And I'm really experiencing that now with my 3-year-old, or he's almost 3. But he just repeats everything you say. Like this morning, like, I stub my toe and I go, "Oh, fuck." And he goes, "Daddy, why'd you say, oh, fuck?" And I'm like, "Oh, God." Oh my God.
Well, wait till he starts mimicking your actions. Like, my boys are 5 and 6. And so I taking them to the gym, and like, when I'm walking on the treadmill, they're hopping on the treadmill, walking, or on the elliptical, or taking them to CrossFit. It's fun because our CrossFit gym's awesome. Rachel and them do a great job, but Rachel will put them through like a little mini body weight workout, and they're loving it.
Yeah,
kind of walks back. My muscles are getting big, Dad.
I love it.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, Kory, you coach a lot of fighters. What separates the ones who have success from the ones who don't?
I think when you break down fighters, there's some guys that are really talented, guys and girls, I should say. Some that are really talented, some that have a lot of, work ethic, are really tough, and some that are a little bit of both. And I think the ones that really seem to excel are the ones that don't make excuses. They show up to training. They show up to training consistently. They're willing to fight often. That's a mistake that I made when I was, coming up, is I didn't fight as often as I should have. But yeah, don't make excuses. Show up and train consistently, and really just have that mentality that I'm always going to be learning and trying to get better. Like almost like a student of the game for forever.
White belt mentality.
Exactly, because you can't think that you know everything, and you have to be willing to listen, learn, adjust, adapt, and be consistent, not make excuses. I know that might seem like a lot of things.
Yeah.
But ultimately, like those, though, in my opinion, those are the things that make you the best athlete that you can be.
Makes complete sense.
Yeah.
I'm not shocked by any of that.
No.
Yeah, that white belt mentality, like I've heard you talk about it on here before, like makes a huge difference. Like just being able to step back and learn from whoever it is teaching you. Like, I'm a brown belt in jiu-jitsu, and I still learn. Like I can watch other people do things and ask a question, and it's not to say that it's not that I don't know that move, but I want to know, like, hey, like why'd you do it that way? Like, why'd you do it that way and not this way? Then, like, when they can explain it, then it gets you thinking. You're like, okay, like, let me try that. Or, like, why do I do it this way and not that way? And start to reinforce that, again, going back to that why. If you understand why you're doing something, it's a lot easier to find the best way to do it. And, just always being a student of the game, never stopping, being, coachable, taking instruction, but also not just blindly following certain people.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, just like with kids, like you have to make sure that they're still willing to push back when it's necessary to push back.
Yeah.
Like, okay, like you want me to do this, like why do you want me to do this? Because if it doesn't make sense to me, why should I do it?
Yeah. I think the greatest question that you can ever ask is why.
Yeah.
Like there's no better question than why about anything.
Yeah. My oldest is a big why guy right
Yeah.
now.
Hey.
Yeah.
Why do I need to put on my shoes?
Yeah.
Trying to learn.
Because we're
Yeah.
leaving the house.
Yeah.
Why do I have to put on a sweatshirt?
Yeah.
Because it's 30 degrees outside.
Yeah.
Like why?
Why?
Like, why?
Yeah.
Why? Everything's why right now.
Yeah.
You got to make it make sense for them.
Yeah.
Make it make sense. Make it make sense. That's
Yeah.
a great thing. Everything, make it make sense.
Yeah.
Daddy,
'cause if
why does it get
doesn't-
dark outside?
Oh, here we go.
Well, the Earth orbit.
Yeah, and then I'm like, because it means it's time to go to sleep. I start to explain. I'm like, nah, like that's gonna go way over. Then that's just gonna open up a whole nother envelope of questions that
Yeah.
I don't have sufficient answers for.
My dad's answer was always physics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why physics? Well, why physics? I'm like,
Yeah.
all right, cool.
I got to learn physics.
Yeah. Well, we've covered a lot about the mindset of stuff that actually works. There's a lot of woo-woo bullshit and self-improvement. What's some of that total bullshit out there, or things that are out there that are said about mental, the mental side of things that's just total bullshit?
Opinion here, but I think
That's what we like opinions.
the positive mindset thing is sometimes bullshit. And I say that because it's real easy to just like stay positive. Positivity doesn't get you shit.
Yeah.
Like, okay, like, yeah, it's good to be positive, but we're not looking at something of like, how can I be positive here? It's how is this productive? Does that make sense? So like when you have a thought, it's not thinking, oh, I need to make that a positive thought. It's like, no, it's looking at the thought you had and thinking, how can I make this a productive thought? And where does this opportunity lie? Because if we're just trying to be positive all the time, and we're just like, okay, this isn't bad, this is good. It's like, well, that doesn't mean shit. There's no substance to that. It's like, okay, let me be able to reframe my thinking in a way that is productive and serves me and comes from gratitude and sees opportunities. That is ultimately kind of the framework you need to create in your mind, not just like, oh, let's be positive.
Yeah.
So Yeah. Simple answer on that one. But man,
that's great.
The positivity movement, like, and sometimes if I'm being completely honest, like people always like, oh, be nice to yourself. Like you got to show yourself grace, be nice to yourself. No, sometimes the best answer is to be like, hey man, like what the fuck are you doing? Like take a step back, get your shit together and start doing the right things. Like you have to have those hard conversations with yourself. And that's not positive. You know, it's sometimes it's negative, but it's being real, being honest. And that is where you can actually see, okay, how do I move through this? How do I change my mind to be productive? Not just see the positive. I don't care about positive.
So that's why I like the word enthusiastic.
Yeah.
Because it adds that productivity side to the positive. You're excited to do something.
Right.
Like, you can be positive about it. That doesn't mean you want to do it. But
if
you add enthusiasm to it, now you're excited to want to do it. So,
and just like looking at it, that's a great thing. So if we talk about like being grateful, right? Like we talk about like, if you want to set yourself up to have a good mindset going into things, it's not just about being positive. It's about beforehand being intentional with the way you think about it. So like, if I want to set myself up to enjoy training today, even if maybe I wake up and I'm dreading it, but I want to make sure that I enjoy it so I do well, I take a step back and say, okay, like what am I excited about to go train? And it's not just being excited to be there or whatever. It's like looking at it in a productive way, or what opportunities does it give me? You know, like, okay, it gives me an opportunity to see a lot of my friends. It gives me an opportunity to push myself. It gives me an opportunity to stay true to the pillars that I want, you know, to embody. And it gives me the opportunity to actually do something that's uncomfortable. And then you look at it and you're like, okay, I have these opportunities. And I framed it that way because I want to be intentional about how I go into this training session. And that intention ultimately helps you take action to improve. And then you're not just dreading the training session anymore. You have something to look forward to. And it's not because you're being positive. It's because you're seeing the productivity that comes from it. And I'm not talking about productivity as far as like doing more. You know, it's not that big old woohoo thing. It's like, how is this serving?
Well, it goes back to like quality over quantity.
Yeah.
So making sure you're getting the quality reps in, but you're intentional about the quality of what you're doing.
Right.
And you're going to be more you're going to have better productivity doing it that way than if you just do rep after rep after rep.
It's like when you think about goals, right?
Yeah.
Like probably a big goal guy, and you want to have SMART goals, right? You want things that are measurable. So it's like, okay, if I set intentions before I go train, and we're using training and stuff because I'm a fighter, right? But this applies to anything, right? You set intentions beforehand, and you're like, okay, what do I want to get out of this session? What am I going to do to get that outcome? And how can I actually measure that? And it goes back to the data thing. Like, okay, like I want to be more resilient. I want to build my cardio, and I want to, you know, practice these things to make sure that I don't give up in the fight. Okay, that's great. How am I actually going to do that? Well, when I'm sparring, when I start to feel tired, that is my opportunity to shoot a takedown, to move forward. Okay, that's great. How many takedowns do I want to get each round? Like I want to get 3 takedowns each round, at least, or attempt to get 3 takedowns each round. And then you look back and you're like, okay, how well did I do? Well, I got tired and I didn't make the choice to go for that takedown. Now that's a measurable thing. I only went for 2 takedowns. So tomorrow, how am I going to improve? Next time, I'm going to say, okay, again, I'm going for 3 takedowns. Now, when I'm presented with the choice of whether I want to push through being tired, I'm going to make that choice to go for that other takedown. Maybe it puts me in a bad spot. Maybe it gets me, you know, choked out, whatever it is. But it doesn't matter, because ultimately your goal there was to push yourself through that barrier that you created because you were tired, and to improve your cardio, to improve your resilience, and to improve your ability to adapt and move forward. And you did that. So it doesn't really matter that you got choked out because you went for a takedown, you were gassed. It matters that you achieved the desired outcome that you wanted and were able to measure it, improve on it, and implement it the next day.
Set the goals for the things that you can control.
Yeah. Control. Yeah. So like, you know, the dichotomy of control, right? what you can control, what you can't control. Because when you start trying to control things you can't really control,
you're screwed.
It's and like if we want to apply that to fighting again, like, you know, people often fear like failure, fear losing. You can't control the outcome of a fight, right? But what you can control
is how you fight,
the things you do, what you embody while you're in there. That's why, like, when I look at it, I don't think about beating the other person. I don't think about winning. I think about breaking them. Because if I can break them, then I'm probably going to win. You know what I'm saying? And how do I break them? It's like, okay, if I can move forward, if I can push harder, if I'm tired, I know they're tired. And if I'm tired and I can push even further, I know they're going to be even more tired. And then you see that, you can see it in their body language. And then you're like, okay, one more time. Like, they just got up after I took them down, and that's a big victory for them. Let me take them down again.
Make them get up again.
When I get them down, like, let me, they got a cut on their forehead. Let me grind my elbow into their face and make them bleed a little more. I know that sounds brutal, but we're talking about breaking them mentally. And when you break someone mentally, you're more likely to be able to beat them and win. While you can't control the outcome of winning, you can control the actions you take to break them.
See, so I was a baseball player, and fortunate to play at a pretty high level. And everybody talks about how baseball is one of the most mental sports out there. But having gotten into jiu-jitsu, I'm like, fuck that. That is way more mental than baseball.
Yeah.
But having that deep background in baseball, I mean, these are all things that we learned from playing at from a very young age. For the successful ones, the ones that were able to go on. I was taught from a young age, like, again, like you said, control what you can control. But same thing, it's like I can get on the mound and I can control where I throw the pitch.
Yeah.
But once that ball leaves my hand, I am no longer in control. I can make the perfect pitch, and that guy just puts a perfect swing on it and hits a home run.
Yeah.
But I can't. I have to go back and step on that mound and do it again. And who knows? The very next time I face him, I could make the exact same pitch, and he swings and misses, or he rolls over, or whatever. But yeah, I mean, that's I never went out there thinking like, oh, I'm gonna go strike all these guys out. I was like, oh, I'm gonna go and attack. I think we were talking about that before you walked in. I was talking with the guest we had one before about setting goals and things like that, and that's just kind of the approach that I've always had.
And like every time you throw that pitch, let's say he does hit a homer, you have to step back on that mound and be able to reset.
Absolutely.
Be able to disconnect from it, right? And it's like one of my old hockey coaches, absolutely great coach, and he would always say, fix it and forget about it. And I always tell myself, etch a sketch. Like when I need to fix something, etch a sketch. And it's not just like a mental thought. It goes with a physical like movement, right? Because when you can start pairing a physical movement with a mental thought, it reinforces it, right? So like you can think like, oh, I need to reset. And sometimes you're able to reset without doing something physical, right? But if you can think like you're getting rocked or whatever, and you're like, man, I need a reset. You get out of the pocket, you just take a deep breath and you're like, okay, you have like some type of trigger word, whether it's like just simply thinking reset, I personally think etch a sketch. That's just simple for me. Like it's just deep breath, etch a sketch. And then you're right back into it. You're focused because you're trying to just win moments. You're not trying to win the war.
Yeah, like, one of my favorite coaches that I had was always like, act like you're a chicken with your head cut off. Because what happens when you cut the head off a chicken? Body still runs around before it dies. So like your trigger word was etch a sketch. Mine was chicken. I would just sit there, think, step back, chicken. Cool. Picture a chicken running around with his head cut off.
Yeah.
Step back on the mound and good to go.
Just dial it in.
Yeah.
And you had a coach that kind of brought you to that point and knowing that, but there's a lot of actual studies and science that goes into that concept of resetting. And I think a lot of people come about those things pretty naturally. They don't really understand why it works or whatever it is, but you obviously knew like, hey, when I said chicken, I stepped back on that mound, it worked. Right. And that's like super cool to see that those things can be implemented without any type of having some mindset coach that's telling you need to do this. Like a lot of things, like your body's pretty intuitive. You kind of know, like you should be able to explore like what kind of works for me and how can I make this better and take a step back and reflect and in this moment do this, and ultimately it's chicken sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I got it from I ultimately started in 8th grade. It was a book called The Mental Game of Baseball. And basically talked about all sorts of mental tricks and tips and things written by one of the best sports psychologists out there, Jay Dorfman.
Yeah.
And it was incredible to read. I mean, shit, I think last year was the first year kind of upset about myself. You know what? I didn't read it. I listened to it. So it was the first year that I didn't actually read the book, but I've read the book or listened to the book every year since I've been in 8th grade.
Yeah. It's discipline and consistency right there.
It's my favorite. It's like my Bible. So
do you think every man should train in combat sports?
I do. I really do. Because I think combat sports is something that, whether you want it to or not, you're going to build some of the characteristics that you need to be a man. You know, whether it's the physical capability to actually protect your family if you need to, whether it's like having the physical strength to do, certain things, or it's the mental side of things, like being comfortable, being uncomfortable, being able to set your ego aside and take a loss, and being able to adjust and adapt to the struggles that you have, like overcoming obstacles. So when you look at it, it's like, okay, being a man, you should be able to lead by example, overcome obstacles, deal with stress, and, do things that are uncomfortable, do difficult things, do it with a grateful heart and a productive mindset. And you should have the physical capabilities to back those things up, right? And if you don't, that's okay. You can always work on them. But combat sports helps you do all of those things. Combat sports helps you kill that ego inside that's going to make you want to always be right in an argument with your significant other. It's going to give you a little bit of a softer side with your kids. It's going to make you feel more secure in the person that you are. It's going to give you an opportunity to mingle with people that are like you in some ways and vastly different than you in many other ways. Because a gym is one of those places where you'll have people from all types of races, all types of professional jobs. Like, you can have, cops and criminals on the mats at the same time. It doesn't matter. There's going to be a mix of people. You start to expose yourself to those different people, those different perspectives. It gives you better perspective, and it also teaches you to learn, reflect. And those are two things that are vitally important to being a man, being a husband, being a father, all of those things where it's like, okay, I need to be able to learn. I need to be able to kill my ego. I need to be able to adapt, be consistent, build strength mentally and physically. And all of those things are embodied in martial arts. And it doesn't matter which one you choose. You could choose jiu-jitsu, you can choose MMA, you can even choose some of the other ones. But ultimately, combat sports just helps you be a better person and build a skill. And I think one thing that I forgot to mention is it gives you a community. And I think that that's one piece that so many men are missing in life, right? So many times we feel like we're alone. We feel like we're alone in our struggles. We feel like we're alone in the problems we have. We feel like we have so much that's riding on our shoulders and so much that we have to do. But when we step on the mats, we have people around us. We know that despite our differences, everybody loves everybody. We're going to come and get a good training session in. We're going to talk afterwards. We're going to connect deeply with one another. And we're going to know that these people have our backs. And that community is vitally important to being a man.
I could not agree more with everything you just said. I agree with everything. We had our guest we had on, it was an episode that aired yesterday, is talked about a lot of men not having a community. And it was pretty much exactly what you just said. He was kind of more talking toward like veterans and guys that have come back from deployments, and talking about just the increase in male suicides over like the last, what was it, since 2014?
40%.
40%
up
increase or
40%.
something, which is just saying like as many men have died from suicide as women have died from breast cancer.
Yeah.
Just,
I think it's
sense of community could be a big piece of that.
Yeah, the community, whether it's just
camaraderie.
like the camaraderie, whether it's giving you another like purpose, like something to get good at, right?
Yes.
I think especially people in the military, they have highly skilled jobs, highly stressful jobs too. And they're so good at that. They thrive in that chaos. They have unbelievable abilities and they get put back in the regular world and they're like, this is just not stimulating. This is like, I'm doing some job that I feel like doesn't have a purpose and whatever. You get on the mats and then it's like, okay, like you feel that like stress again. And you feel like, oh, I can overcome this. And now I can deal with it and I can adapt and I can put this like anxiety and maybe some anger and whatever into my training. And it gives me an opportunity to learn a skill set, right? Because a lot of those people are highly skilled individuals and they can't use that skill set in their everyday life. But now they can learn a martial art where it gives them another opportunity to build a high skill set that they're probably going to be pretty good at. And now they can use it and they feel like they have the community, they have the purpose, and they're building a skill set they're being able to learn. And they're also, it's a means of expression. At the end of the day, martial arts is an art. You get to express yourself through that, right? And it's like, okay, when somebody watches you fight or when somebody watches you compete, you want them to see your competition and think about you in a certain way, right? And you can ultimately train, be able to do those things. So whenever I compete, I want somebody to look and say like, man, he was resilient, he was relentless and he was fearless. And how can I do that? Like I can make sure that I'm pushing forward, that I'm never quitting on myself, that I'm taking risks, I'm being intelligent about the risks that I take. Like it's an expression of the person you are and the things that you want to embody. And you're doing it through movement and, sometimes a violent art.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
One other piece, that I don't think you mentioned, but it's something that I think about a lot is it really martial arts really shut off the rest of the world while you're doing it.
Yeah,
absolutely. You can't focus on anything other than that guy in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like one of my favorite pieces of it, just because, with all the stuff I have going in my life, it's like the one place where I can kind of go or this is in my bag and up in the locker room and I can focus. All I'm focused on for this next hour is, training.
Yeah.
And it's like therapeutic.
Yeah.
And
You
really
hit it right on the head. Like step on the mats and everything. Just you have singular focus. And you see this now, like how often you're standing in a line at a coffee shop. And we used to be able to just stand there and be alone with our thoughts. Now everybody just pulls out their phones every time. Knowing like we're losing the ability to be alone with our thoughts. Right. And that's kind of scary. But when you step on the mats, like you don't have a phone, you don't have those things, and you have a singular focus where now, like, yeah, you don't have to be alone with all of those thoughts that are building up, but you get to focus and like express yourself and, like you said, just be present. I think that's the biggest thing is like being present. And we can build that presence into all of the aspects of our lives. Like everything would be way better. Yeah. Jiu-jitsu is just a vehicle to do that.
Yeah, for me, I mean, it was the hardest thing. I mean, it is the hardest thing I've ever done, which makes everything else in my life super easy.
Yeah.
Like if I can knock that out in the morning, like my day is super productive because nothing is going to be harder than what I just went through on the mat.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
More, man. So what's a belief you used to hold about training or mindset that really changed?
Ooh, that's a tough one. About training or mindset. I would say that one thing that I've changed significantly is the idea that more is always better. And I say that because as I've gotten a little bit older, dealt with some injuries, more is not always better. And that's not to say that I'm not telling you to go and, train less or do less, because no, you need more often than not, you're not going to overtrain. You should be training full intensity, doing all of these things. You should be tired. You should be hurting and all of that kind of stuff. When I say more is not always better, it's you have to know where you're at. If you're actually dealing with a certain injury but like we talked about before, you still need to do something. Maybe today's not the day where you do more. Maybe today's the day where you do that small something and you recover because you know tomorrow you have to spar. And tomorrow you want to actually do more and push yourself beyond where you thought you could go. So today, because I'm dealing with this injury, I do what I need to do, but maybe I don't push as hard as I could have. And I think, a lot of people could probably interpret that in a bad way, because you'll hear a lot of people say, train smarter, not harder. I think that's kind of bullshit sometimes, because you got to train hard, man. Like, you're getting locked in the cage with another person that's trying to hurt you.
Yeah.
If you're not training hard, you're going to get hurt, or you're going to get beat up enough that you want to quit. You have to train hard. But there are times where you have to be intelligent enough to say, hey, maybe today I don't do more. Maybe today I do the things I need to do. I do what I set out to do, but I do them a little differently to get the most impact overall, so I can do even more tomorrow that I planned on doing anyways.
How do you define success in your life?
Define success. To me, success looks like living my purpose. Because I say that because success, what I thought about success before was accomplishing a lot of things. And I think there's a lot of people that think that is like, I want to accomplish this goal, and I want to accomplish this goal. I want to accomplish this goal. But once you accomplish that goal, what happens next? And I think especially as a driven individual, you're always driven to accomplish certain goals, right? And you accomplish the goal, and then you're like, okay, I did this thing. I bought this car. I won this tournament. I did this thing. Like, what do I do next? I need to do more. I need to do something bigger. And for me, while those things are great, and I think those things do impact your overall success, success to me looks like living with purpose. And I would say my overall purpose and mission in life is to educate and inspire while sharing connection, love, and wisdom along the way. And being successful means that through all of the things that I do, I'm going to live in alignment with that mission. If I do that, then no matter what I do, no matter how my life changes, no matter how my goals change because of whatever circumstances or whatever path I go down, I'm still on the track of living that purpose. I can feel fulfilled and successful because of that, no matter where it takes me.
Well, you said your mission is to educate and inspire. Excuse me. What's the biggest lesson fighting has taught you?
To never give up, to never quit, keep moving forward. There's always a way, and I remember this very distinctly. I used to go to the Thoroughbred Wrestling Academy to train with Jesse Martinelli because he coached there. So, a couple of times a week after he got done coaching his practices, it'd be like 8:30, 9 o'clock. But I'd go there and we'd get some extra training in, like we were talking about before. And I remember Marcus, who's the owner of Thoroughbred and a coach there, and he was talking to the younger athletes, and he would always give the most incredible speeches after these practices. So I felt grateful to even be there, just waiting for Jesse to be done while I'm listening to these speeches. And one day he was talking, and then, we were kind of talking afterwards, and he told me, you don't always have to be better than the guy. You just have to find a way to win. And that made me realize, okay, no matter what, there's always a way. There's always a way, no matter what obstacle you face. It's like you kind of extrapolate from that and expand it out to apply to different things. But no matter what obstacle you face, no matter what you do, no matter who you fight, no matter what it is that you're dealing with, there's always a way to get through it. There's always a way to get around it, even if you can't see it in the moment, even if you feel like deeply depressed, like deeply hurt, like you're struggling with a lot of things. It's just taking a step back and remembering like, hey man, like you're going to get through this. Like you're going to find a way. You always do. And like having faith, whether it's religious or not, just having faith to say, hey, there's always a way forward. And I think that's the biggest lesson that MMA has taught me because, over the last 10, 15 years, like there's been so many obstacles. There's been so many times where I could have quit. I could have stopped training. I could have stopped fighting. I could have stopped coaching and whatever. And like plenty of excuses. And ultimately it's like, hey, you got to keep moving forward and taking a step back, remembering your why, moving forward and knowing like, hey, there's always a way. There's always a way to find a way to win. And whatever winning looks like to you.
Is there one obstacle that stands out more than another?
I think when I became a dad, it was a big obstacle. I actually found out that I was going to be a dad the same night that I was fighting for the Shamrock FC amateur bantamweight title. And I got TKO'd. The first time I've ever been TKO'd. And, so just lost the title fight. Pro contract was on the line. Didn't get that pro contract. Cussed. Face messed up. And, then it was like, hey, by the way, you're going to be a dad. It's like, okay. So that was a big obstacle because not only was I like, not only did I just like lose a fight that up to that point, I'd only lost one fight before. So like, adapting to a loss as difficult as it is, lost a big fight. I had significant physical damages and I'm 23 years old and I don't even have my own place to live right now. And I'm going to be a dad. I actually wasn't working. I had graduated college and I saved up money in college so I could just train and travel. I was like, okay, just lost a fight. My brain's messed up. I'm going to be a dad and need a job. Need a job that's not fighting. So yeah, that's kind of where I got started at Nike. Okay. I took a job at, as a machine operator on the floor, making like $15 an hour, working the weekends so I could be home during the week to take care of my son. I didn't have to take care of pay for childcare. I could have some benefits, some health insurance. Sounded pretty nice.
Yeah.
And then it was like, had Carson and moved my way up the company, found a way to keep training, and ultimately, like, here I am. So I would say that was probably like the biggest obstacle in my fight career. The rib injury was another one that took me out for a while because I never really had any good answers. Didn't know what it was going to look like moving forward, but yeah.
Rib injury is a weird one. Like there's not like a easy way to fix that one. Like you tear your ACL, like there's a pretty proven surgery that that works. Right. Like for something like as like obscure as like a rib injury and separating the cartilage from your sternum.
Yeah,
a pretty obscure one.
Yeah,
God, crazy moment, man. You lose a title fight, find out you're going to be a dad. Like I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Like I remember when I found out I was going to be a dad, it was completely different circumstances.
I was under similar ones to him.
Yeah, I know you were.
Yeah, twice.
Yeah, I was gonna say, but you weren't battered though.
So yeah, it was just an interesting moment, really, and it was an opportunity. It was one of those opportunities. It's like, okay, here we go. It's a new challenge, new opportunity, and just like anything else in life, you can either sit there and think about it however you want to think about it, or you can see it as an opportunity and move forward and be excited and do what it takes to put yourself in the position to, be a man, be a father, and keep doing the things you need to do in life.
Yeah. As a father, do you have your son in martial arts yet?
No, not yet. Since he was probably like, could walk. We've been messing around, we'll wrestle. He's got boxing gloves. He's got a heavy bag. I actually built an MMA gym in my basement. So I have wall mats and, jiu-jitsu mats and all that kind of stuff. And we'll go down there and we'll mess around and comes to the gym and things like that. But he is not yet into like formal instruction. He's kind of all over the place. So I didn't want to, we got him into hockey, learned to play hockey a little young, and he just wasn't to the point where he wanted to do the skating and things like that. And then ultimately it made him not really want to try it again. So I realized like, okay, like I don't want to put him into something too early and pull him away from like liking it long term. So yeah, like we train a lot. Like he knows how to throw roundhouse kicks, front kicks, punches. He knows how to get in his stance. He knows what a takedown is. He can do a rear naked choke, a guillotine, things like that. And he loves to mess around. But no formal instruction just yet. We've talked about potentially starting wrestling sometime soon. So we'll see. He's going to play baseball this year. And we'll see, what the sports, the formal instruction sports look like. He played some floor hockey, over the last few months and stuff like that. So, I think jiu-jitsu is in his future, but, nothing quite yet.
Yeah. I heard once that, you can never make your kids love something, but you can make them hate something.
Yeah.
And that's something I'm trying to, keep the front of my head while, like I want to get the boys into wrestling, ASAP, but it's like, man, I don't want to start too early. I don't want to be that like pushy dad. That's, like, I want them to love it because I love it, and, it's just something I'm trying to keep in the forefront of my head. But,
I think if he's around it enough and sees how much you love it, he's going to grow. Cause like, Connor has only seen pictures and videos of me. Like he's never seen me play baseball, but he fucking loves it. He's obsessed with baseball.
Yeah.
And he's never seen me play. I take that back. He was at an alumni, got to see me pitch. But yeah, he was obsessed with it before then. We got videos of him 2 years old throwing a baseball. So I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah. It's funny how that happens. It goes back to the whole idea of like kind of leading by example and your kids watching what you do, right? And like, so didn't get your story, but you said you were in similar circumstances to, what my struggles with, with all of that.
Surprised.
So was like your biggest, mindset shift from before you were a dad to being a dad? Like what did that kind of look like?
I'll be honest, I was pretty selfish prior to that. And in that moment, I realized like it's no longer just about me, and that I've got a whole nother person that I'm shaping their lives, and I want to make sure that I'm shaping it in the right direction. So that was a big shift. And then the next one was a divorce that happened a couple of years ago. That was a big mindset shift. So working my way through those two things, and we had another one. They're 15 months apart, so. Yeah, we were pretty good. Yeah, we were pretty good at surprising each other with that stuff. But yeah, no, that was great. Both kids, made me focus. Like, that was the thing, is like I had a business coach, and I was freaking out before Oliver was born. And she's like, I want you to write a letter to Oliver. Like, I want you to sit down and write a letter about all the things that you're excited about, all the things that you're concerned about, all your worries and all this. And it was just I just read it the other day. It was I still have it. And I like to sit back and think like, man, these were the fucking things I was worried about. Like, yeah, it was nothing. Like it just naturally, like I just kicked it in the next gear. Like I knew I had to, like I knew that there was no other option. It was, I wasn't just going to sit around and not let anything happen. Like I've got now, not only do I have one, I've got two that I've got to provide for. And now I've got a second one and got to teach him, and go back to the beginning about how I'm going to teach him to be, instill those principles, morals, values, ethics, all those things in them to make sure that they're better than I am. Because that's my goal. My goal is that my children are better people than I am.
Gave you a why.
Yeah.
Give you a why. Yeah. Put you to that next level.
So,
and like you seems like a more traditional approach maybe, but with that, like what was your biggest mindset shift from before being a dad to being a dad? Like what changed?
I mean, I would say very similar to Pat's is, I realized, wow, man, I was pretty selfish before. I mean, I've been married for a while now, and, me and my wife have been together for almost 15 years. So it's like, it's a pretty established relationship, but having the boys, that was a big wake up call, especially, having the first one. That was like, okay, wow, it's really not all about me. My, organizing my time and my schedule and everything really changed. I like really had to dial everything in and time block and then, but this is one thing that, I brought this up on an episode we had recently is like, we have a second one now who's almost 9 months old. And I was telling my wife how I feel like I feel like a little bit more of a connection with him than I ever did with our older son. And she's like, well, you're around a lot. Like when our older son was, really young, I was just still balls to the wall of my career, but like I wasn't making my family as much of a priority as I am.
Mm-hmm.
And that's definitely a shift in the last few years. And I think when we were talking about, I think the podcast has kind of been a kind of a reason for that, honestly, because we talk about fatherhood and everything on here so much that I'm like I feel like I have to live the things that I'm, like I have to put my money where my mouth is and really like live the shit that I'm talking about on here all the time.
Right.
And we have awesome guests like you that come on and just kind of like, seriously, that inspire us to be better people. And, we take little tidbits away from everybody and how do we implement that into our lives. And it's been great.
Yeah. Yeah. I can imagine. So just like being able to talk to so many different people and have so many different conversations and get so many perspectives, right?
And they're so different too.
Yeah,
like we had a stand-up comedian in here and now we have a professional MMA fighter. It's like, it's very diverse. And it's awesome. I really, this is one of the best decisions I think I've ever made is deciding to do this. And it's been a lot of fun, been a lot of work, a lot of time, money, and effort has gone into it, but I wouldn't do it any different.
Yeah. Good. No regrets.
No regrets. Well, Kory, this has been amazing having you on here, man. This is, I think people are going to get a ton out of this episode. You've definitely given us a lot of wisdom here. Is there anything else you wanted to chat about before we get out of here?
I mean, I think I'm good. I appreciate you guys for having me on.
Absolutely.
It's really a great experience. I love having these types of conversations and connecting with, like-minded individuals, productive, fathers and, career-driven people. And it's just really great experience. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have to get some training in again soon.
Definitely.
Tuesday morning or something. Yeah. Get you back in the gi.
Yep, I need to.
Yeah.
I need to.
Well, we like to end it with one last question. We call it the tombstone game.
Okay.
Here lies Kory. What's it say on your tombstone?
Man, it's a tough. What does it say? Let me say this. I would hope that I would have made an impact on other people's lives. So let's go with something that, is maybe a little bit inspirational and it would say, I lived a good life, and I know that while you reading this might feel alone, remember, we're never alone. I'm always with you in spirit, and you can do great things with your hard work, effort, time, and energy. Put your full mind into it.
Perfect, man.
That's awesome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you guys so much for tuning into the show. If you haven't clicked that subscribe button, please do so. That would help us out a ton. Click that like button as well. Comment what you thought below, and we will see you next time.